Good day, everybody, and welcome to Not Just Business Season 2. Those of you who are serious rugby fans would have seen this lady on television many times. If you watched the World Cup final in November 2019, you would have seen her jump higher than anyone else when Siya Kolisi lifted the World Cup. She's the physiotherapist to the Springbok rugby team. Welcome to this podcast episode, Rene Naylor.
Hi, Derek P. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor for me to be here chatting to you today.
Thank you for being here. Rene, most people in your profession would say you have the ultimate dream job. You might have a different view, but we'll get through that in a minute. But let's tell us about your journey from school to World Cup rugby team member.
Yes, Derek, it is a dream job for many physiotherapists. I definitely did not think I was going to land this job when I started as a young physiotherapist, qualifying in 1993, not giving my age away.
The job has obviously been very good to you.
I do feel it's a real honor and a privilege to be part of such a big brand, the Springboks, because the Springboks means so much to our country. It's not just sport. It's a symbol of our hope. It's a symbol of our heritage, the good and the bad of South Africa. And so for me, to be part of that brand is really special. And I definitely think that being appointed as a physiotherapist for the Springboks was the pinnacle of my career.
Mm-hmm. Where did you start? I don't think you just knocked on their door and walked in.
Yeah, it wasn't an easy journey for me. I started deciding on my career in Standard 8. I think that's grade 10. And Standard 8, we did career counseling. And I wasn't very successful when I went for my career counseling at the very prestigious University of Cape Town. The guy looked at me, or barely looked at me. He looked at my paper that I had to fill in, and he said to me, "You won't be able to be a physiotherapist. You must do food technology." At that stage, I didn't know what food technology was. I was totally intimidated by him, and I just got up and I walked out and cried all the way home. And I said, I don't know what to do because I have no other choice. I didn't have a second choice. What is technology? I asked my dad. My dad was luckily my mentor. And he said to me, you know what? This guy doesn't know your skills. He doesn't know your talents. He doesn't know your dreams. He's just there to fill certain faculties at the university. So don't take it personally. Because I took it very personally.
I can imagine.
He can see. And he was probably my age, he's middle age and quite intimidating. I think that was a blessing that I had someone that believed in me, because if I was on my own, I would have given up. That is probably the lesson I would say to any young person: don't give up. Find someone that believes in you. I then, finished my matric. I started my undergraduate degree at UWC, completed that degree in 93, then went on to do my master's and specialized in sport physiotherapy. I was lucky. I started a little private practice in Mitchell's Plain in 97, and in that year started associating with my rugby club. So it was my first rugby job, was at a rugby club. And a rugby club with no facilities. So we worked out of a little container. It was very primitive. We didn't have lights on the field. We used the car generator to get our lights at night. But I learned a lot. And I was studying my specialization in sport physio. So I applied everything. I was sort of a little bit of the wise person there, coming and saying, we must eat this before the game. We can't have chip rolls, We must look at our diet. We must do our warm-ups properly. And so it was a very exciting time for me, even though my family thought it's crazy, you're not getting any money for this, you've studied. But that was my beginning days, working out of that container on that rugby field, community rugby. And I only managed to get a job at the provincial team in, I think it was 2001. I started at Western Province. That was major for me. This was now my first professional environment that I was stepping into. It was nice. I started off with the big names like Skalk Burger, Jean de Villiers. They were in my team. Andries Becker, Francois Lowe. They were just out of matric. And I was their first physio. They were asking me, when did you matriculate? Just checking if I was a physio. I was much younger then. And I stayed at Province for a number of years until 2008. And I must say that I did not set out that I wanted the Springbok job. That was not the ultimate thing. I just worked very hard to prove myself. I was a small person, and I think I felt this need that you have to prove that you can do this job, that you will survive. And I put in a lot of effort and hours into my job. And in that final year, I was actually busy helping design the high performance center at Western Province. So we were busy with plans, looking at a gym, because we also worked out of a container basically at Western Province at those years. We had a little room that we worked out of, like a shed, basically every Monday evening. Me working with the under 19s and the under 20s, and finally got to the Stormers level. So in 2008, when I was asked to join the Springboks, it was major. I didn't think that they would appoint a female ever for national team. So it was never an ambition even at that stage. I just was very happy that I'd reached the senior team at Western Province. I was working with the Currie Cup team and then with the Stormers team, and was very proud of myself that I'd managed to get there. So that was just another step that was major for me. If I think back at the time, it's quite exciting now that so many women are coming through in the system.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great.
And no one's going to be surprised about a female taking that position now.
Mm-hmm.
But at that stage, it was a big thing for me.
I can imagine. So tell us about some of your favorite moments.
So as I said, being appointed the physio was definitely the highlight. And then 2009 was definitely special. 2008, joining the Springboks wasn't easy for me. It's a lot of new things to get used to understand the culture, prove myself to players that did not work with a female physiotherapist before, showing that I was a good physiotherapist more than anything. That was the primary focus for me. And 2009, it was just a very special year. As you know, we won the Tri-Nations and we beat the British Irish Lions. And that was sort of a pinnacle for me. And up until last year, it was a very dry period for us in terms of trophies. 2009 was the last time a South African team won the Super Rugby. It was a very special year. And other milestones would be my 100th Test cap.
When did you get that?
In Washington, D.C. in 2018.
Okay.
I definitely want to say that it's definitely not as special as a player because I don't have to get selected for every test match like players do. I don't expect the same, accolades. But for me, it was special.
I can imagine. It sounds very special.
And that test match, Peter Steph de Toy, who I'd known for very long, being from Western Province, he was captain for that test match. Rassie was already coach. It was in 2018. So I left Springbok Rugby. I retired after the 2015 World Cup. Retired in inverted commas because I actually came back. But when I retired, I was on 98 test caps. I remember people saying to me, you're going and you've got 2 more tests, for 100. And I thought, well, what can I do? It is what it is now. And so having that opportunity to come back was really a big moment. Come back, and within 2 test matches, I had my 100th test. And then also working with legends, big players, big names, old players that have come through the ranks with me. Villiers and Skalkberger and Francois Lowe, the guys at Province, Brian Rene, players at other franchises, and establishing relationships. Because I think that's the favorite moments about rugby. It's also about relationships that you build with people.
And not just in your own team, in opposition teams as well.
Yes, exactly. Like in the Bulls, they always tease that, I should come and work at the Bulls. And I was always excited. I said, I'll wait for Fourie and Victor Matfield to become coaches, and then they'll appoint me as the therapist. Those are special times for me. And obviously the biggest favorite moment was last year.
I still remember that jump. You definitely jumped higher than anybody else. So you must have had some disappointments and some challenges along the way too. Tell us about a couple of those.
So the disappointments, I think, was starting in 2008. I think that I came from a real high now being appointed as a physio.
Mm-hmm.
But then I came into a system that was unique for me and a lot of adjustments that needed to happen. It was a very Donnie Craven era. I couldn't say I was a fan. He's done great work. He's a controversial figure. And he was the hero then. If you know the name of his dog, you couldn't really be a Springbok.
Yeah, sure.
It was very far removed from my culture, but kept quiet and worked hard because that is what I felt I needed to do. So that was difficult for me in 2000. And it was also a system of hierarchy at that stage. The longer you've been there, the more you could say.
Yes, okay.
Now you could sit at the back of the bus. We sit at the front. It was a unique system for me. Joining there in 2008 to now coming back in 2018 when we were a very diverse group. And then disappointments for me is probably the 2015 World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
The loss to Japan, that 32-34 game, that was devastating.
Who doesn't remember that one? Yeah. One of those things is difficult to live down if you're the coach.
Yes.
As a physio, I suppose you could say, well, it wasn't me.
I think that, you always feel that's what I've learned. I've worked with people that definitely are very excited and they would finish the game and the medical person would say, we don't have to worry. There were very few injuries, even though we lost. But I see it differently. I don't really care about the injuries. Ultimately, rugby is about winning.
Sure.
And didn't win the game, then I must also assess myself and analyze what did I do that contributed to the loss. And maybe the fact that there's very little injuries is because they didn't tackle anyone in the game, and that's why we lost. You can't use the injuries as a defining factor. Yeah, those were the challenges. And I think the disappointments were, for me, very personal disappointment, which I don't speak about often, was possibly becoming a mom in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
I was single at the time, fell pregnant, thought I was going to be expelled from the team, went to see Heineke. So firstly, it was amazing that Heineke was so accepting of this, because I think I felt like a Senate 8 pupil going to tell the principal I've fallen pregnant now, you're going to say, sorry, but you have to leave the team. And he says, no, of course, you're welcome to join the team and you must, decide why you want to do this. Most women don't want to come back to work when they've had a baby. So I went back. It was amazing to be able to go back. I went back when my son was 8 weeks old.
Good Lord. So I presume maybe you have a support system at home to look after him.
Well, he came with me. 8 weeks old. Heineke agreed he could come with me. I had a full-time nanny. So that is a very different environment. And obviously, our socialization about parenting and about motherhood is all different. So my perceptions, my challenges were definitely working on what should a mother be? I should be at home, but I really want to get to the World Cup and I want to be part of the team. I don't want to lose my job. As women, as mothers, you make hard decisions. And so that hard decision I made to go back. That must have been so hard for the team. If I think back now, I think how hard was that for the players and for the support team, because that's not something in their minds or their perceptions of what a mother should do. I don't think they even envisage that the Springbok physio becomes a mother. She leaves the job, she goes home and she stays with the baby. That was probably one of the most challenging times, marrying the two, my career and motherhood.
Okay, well, you obviously managed to manage it because here you still are.
Thanks, Derek.
What happened to your own practice when you're on tour? Does it just close?
No, I've been very blessed in that I've had amazing physios that have supported me in my two practices, my practice in Mitchells Plain and my practice in town. My practice in town, I do have a business partner, Ina Croy, and she's also involved in rugby. Similar, most people sometimes get us confused. And she works with the Western Province team. And so she's been managing the practice when I've been traveling.
Okay, nice. So that's organized.
I've managed to maintain the practice, but obviously it goes through very quiet periods. And I've always been open to clients when they come to me and say, listen, I am working with a rugby team, so you may come back and another physio, my business partner, would see you. But you can't build your business as much. I'm traveling 7 months of the year.
I see you got your master's degree and you wrote your thesis on pre-season hamstring injuries. And that was a while back. What did you find? Is there a bigger risk pre-season of people getting hamstring injuries?
It wasn't so much to look at what happens in the pre-season. I monitored 100 rugby players over a whole season. But my research question was to find out, could we predict in the pre-season who was going to get a hamstring injury in the season? Could we test players in the pre-season and say, you are more at risk for a hamstring injury than this guy? And if we put some interventions in place, could we then prevent the injuries? Because my primary focus is injury prevention. How do we prevent injury? And from that, we've evolved, like in 2006, I finished my thesis in 2004. 2006, we developed a protocol to assess a player in the pre-season and then draw up an injury risk profile for him, which is what I still do today. It has evolved a lot since 2006 because we include different batteries of tests that are evidence-based, and as the research shows us what tests to use. But that takes about 45 minutes to an hour with each player, and then we show him his profile, and we'll say to this particular player, we'll say, we'd like you to focus on your calf strength or your groins or your ankles, because you look like you're at risk for an ankle sprain. So we try to be a little bit more specific and individualized, as opposed to more than 20 years ago, we would just say, we must just prevent ankle sprains. Now we're saying, you need to focus on your ankles, you need to focus on your hamstrings, you need to focus on your groin or your back. We're looking at profiling, and then together with that, we also look at their load, how much they're training and how many games they play. And that load will also help us determine whether they would get injured or not.
Okay. So it's become far more specialized now by the sound of it than when you started. What's the worst injury you've ever encountered on a rugby field?
I think the worst injury was definitely Jean de Villiers, November 2014, when he dislocated his knee.
Oh, that before another World Cup.
Got him on the field and, the legs were at 90-degree angles, his lower leg to his thigh, and having to then put my hand on his knee and then relocate and feel it go back into place, see the absolute pain he was in. They came onto the field, gave him oxygen. It was, a test against Wales. And that was probably the worst I've seen. And also special because I then treated him from that moment right up until him getting back onto the pitch again. And that was sort of a career-threatening, career-ending injury that he had because he had already had so many surgeries to that knee. And so that's probably my worst injury that I've encountered.
Now just remind me, did that keep him out of the 2015 World Cup?
No, we managed to get him fit again.
That's amazing.
It was very hard work. We worked 3 hours a day on injury treatments and rehab. I mean, I don't think I treated anyone in that period, but it was public holidays, New Year's Eve. It didn't matter. We had a plan. And John worked so hard. I mean, he was really dedicated because he hasn't had good luck with injuries. And once again, that World Cup was again negative for him because then he actually fractured his jaw.
Oh, yes, I remember that.
So his knee was fine, but then he fractured his jaw. But we worked really hard.
So, I was thinking the other day, I tried to play a little bit of golf, not recently, of course. And I watched golf on TV and I watched tennis. When you hear these people who are individual sportsmen or sportswomen, when they talk about, and somebody asks them, it's like, what are your future plans? Well, we are going to do this and we're going to work on that and we're aiming for this. They always speak in terms of we. Initially, I thought it was like they're using the royal plural, like the queen, but they really mean the team, And you realize then there's no such thing as an individual sport anymore. Everything is a team sport. Everybody's got a support team, and that, the quality of the support team will determine how well they do or not. Obviously, in your case, in the case of a team sport, it's probably no different. For example, a top flight rugby team doesn't just consist of 15 players or match day 23. There's a support team which could be substantial, but not often visible. Tell me how many, other than the 30 players that went to the World Cup last year, how many support staff went?
We, in the World Cup last year, we were 20 support staff.
Okay, so that's quite a sizable group.
We did, have a little bit of a tease with Rassie because Rassie was always, from 2018 when he started, he said, I want a very small management. I want a very small so we can be close-knitted and be aligned about what we want to achieve and our vision. But as the year progressed and as we got closer to the World Cup, the need to have people specialize in different positions becomes evident. And in the end, we were 20 and it worked, but obviously with good leadership.
Sure. What are the roles in a support team?
I'll start off with a medical team. So we were 2 doctors that were traveling with us, myself and our 2 colleagues, physios. We had 1 dietitian. And in terms of the coaching department, we had obviously our head coach, Rassie. We then had a defense coach, which was Jacques, who is now the current Springbok coach. We had attacking coach, was Felix, that joined us from Europe. And then we had Sticks, that was the skills coach, and Matthew Proudfoot, our forwards coach. So there were basically 5 coaches in total. And then besides the coaches, you have a technical department. And the technical department is doing all the analysis, all the video analysis. And I mean, Lindsay was on his own, but he did all the analysis. And then you've got your operational department. You've got 2 media managers that went to the World Cup. We've got a PR manager, and we had our team manager, and we had a kit manager that looked after all the kit that everyone needed. And in addition to that, we had an embedded cameraman that traveled with us. And we also had a person that was responsible for player welfare. For example, this could also have been a role of the psychologist, but our guy, Eugene, was not a psychologist, but he looked at things like if your house got broken into and you were on tour and you couldn't deal with that, he would deal with that for you, help you deal with things that would distract you from your game and from your preparation.
So those all sound like very important roles. Tell me, was there a support team manager that you all reported to, or did you all somehow report to Rassie?
We all reported to Rassie. Rassie was the head coach and director of rugby, so we all reported to him. There wasn't a hierarchy.
Mm-hmm. It was like a nice flat structure.
We had a very flat structure. I felt I could say what I felt in a meeting or what I felt was good.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And yes, it would be challenged, 20 people, and be strong characters, be strong personalities. So obviously you're not going to agree on everything, but there was an opportunity for debate and to understand why you're saying that and why that would work. But it all comes down to very strong, clear guidelines from leadership. And we had this protocol, which was difficult for me, but everyone had to stick to their role. Because the longer you're there, which is sometimes why I think you shouldn't be there too long, and You need to move on to your next career. Because you stay there long, you start thinking you can comment on other departments. You start thinking, I must say something to operations about doing this different, when in fact you need to stick to your role. And that is what we decided. Everyone would stick to their role. And if someone came to you and commented on someone else's role, if someone came to me and spoke to me about the strength and conditioning that wasn't good, the gym sessions weren't good, I would say to them, you know what? You should go and speak to the strength and conditioning coach. I wouldn't engage that, because we almost felt that would create a virus.
Mm-hmm.
I can't deal with the gym sessions. I can help you with physio. If the physio is terrible, if the massage sessions and the recovery sessions are horrible, and you don't feel that you have access to us because we keep saying we're not available for physio, I can help you with that. But I can't help you. The food is terrible. You must go speak to the dietitian. If you think there's too many analytical meetings, you must speak to the coaches. So that way, I think it worked. Even though it's not easy for people like me that have been there forever, you start thinking.
So you say you're not paid to think, you're paid to follow instructions. I can understand in the team, everything has to take place in a certain way, in a certain order. Tell us about the routines. For instance, on a non-match day on tour, presumably there are routines, the processes that you go through on it. Let's take a non-match day. You're in Japan for the World Cup. You're not playing today. What happens? What does a day look like?
So a day is very full. Starts very early for most of us, usually at about 7. Everyone's busy from usually about 7 in the morning. So if I want to train, do my own personal exercise, I have to do it at 6. Because by 7, I would start treating players, and the coaches would have their coaches meeting. Players that are injured need to see the doctor so that they can be assessed if they're going to train or not. So everyone has got a task from 7 o'clock. There'll be players that we also expect them to do self-screening. So they would also have to go and do 3 or 4 tests to test, are they stiff, and put it in on an app. So they will do their monitoring and their weight. The dietitian will assist with that and check their weight. They have to put all that information. How did they sleep? How's their stiffness in the morning? So they have to fill that in on the app. So from 7, people are busy. And then from 8, there'll be breakfast, but people would go for breakfast as they have their free time in the morning, and then meetings will start. So I usually try and see at least 1 or 2 guys before their meetings start. So they'll have analysis. So on a Monday, for example, the first meeting is a review meeting where you review the game. And then you'll go through your review meeting, you'll have a break, and then they will start with preparing for preview of the following game. And then they'll have split sessions where the forwards will have their meeting to discuss the scrums or the lineouts for that week, and the backs will have their meeting. So there's a lot of meetings and analysis that goes in, which I think lots of people don't know. So in a week, there'd probably be 11 or 12 hours of players doing analysis. That's besides their individual analysis, where they have to go and analyze that oppositional player that they'll be playing against and understand that player, and looking at their own game, and also the clips that they'll be sent the night before from the coach. So many times they'll be lying in physio at 9 at night, and they'll still be analyzing a clip because there's an attack session tomorrow in a meeting where they need to have prepared for. So players are very busy. And for myself, I'm very busy all the time, because between when they're sitting in meetings, you're prepping, doing your admin, because they'll come out of the meetings, you'll quickly want to treat someone, and then you strap them for the actual training sessions. So there'll be a training session and there'll be gym sessions. So it goes until about 10 at night.
So, René, tell me what happens on match days. Is the routine any different?
On match day, the routine is different in that the players have a sleep in.
Mm-hmm.
They don't get up as early as we do. We get up very early and we start prepping for the game. There's a lot of preparation, setting up the room, setting up the change room. One of the physios would do, each will have a specific role. I think that's the beauty of continuity in a team, because everyone gets what their role is on match day. So you don't have to even speak to your colleague, because he knows he's responsible for that and you're responsible for this. Set up your physio room, set up your strapping time. That usually takes at least 2 hours to do that. And then you set up your match strapping list, and then you'd be available for players on that day. So there's not as much treatments going on that day, because if a guy wakes up and he's feeling stiff, he must be able to call you and say, my back's feeling stiff. I need what we call a loss marker to release the tension that they're feeling, and just be there. That's the main thing on match day. Until we actually start the true preparation, which is 4 hours before the match, I'll start strapping. And the strapping would be basically for a few hours. We'd strap the guys up before the actual match starts. And then as physios, we don't really have time to help other departments as much, because we're really full on. It's almost you want to breathe a sigh of relief when they're actually standing there and we're singing the anthem. Because then you know you've got everything for each particular player that they need before the game to make them perform as a gold medalist. That's the ultimate thing. You want to know exactly what this player wants, how he wants his ankles strapped, what he wants to do first, what he wants to do last, what he wants to do when he comes in from his warm-up before he goes onto that pitch for that game. And you want to be prepared. You don't want him to ask you for something and you don't have it.
That's very interesting. So tell me, maybe a difficult question for you, without stepping on anybody's toes. I imagine that the medical team comes under a bit of pressure to make sure somebody is fit for a certain match. Have you had a situation where you think this guy's not right, but they want to pick him? And how do you handle that?
I can't think of a specific example recently. I've spoken to a coach just recently about this, and I said, the primary thing is the relationship between the medical team and the coach, between the physiotherapist and the medical team. Because if there's a good relationship, and when I say a good relationship, I'm actually speaking about trust. There's trust, then you don't have a problem, because then the coach trusts you, and you have to build up that trust, because it actually only comes with time. The coach will then see you actually making the right decisions. You're making decisions in the best interest of the player and the team, because the coach must feel that you are prepared to take a risk, a calculated risk, taking the player's well-being into account. You're taking into account that we're not playing a very important team this week, but we are playing a very important team next week. Would you prefer to have this guy fit next week, playing 80 minutes, or would you satisfied with him playing 20 minutes this week and he's actually going to make it impossible for him to play next week? So you play up the scenarios, and you also let the coach see how the guy performs. I think it's always important for the coach to see what the player is able to do. So you could, if you're doing a return to play test, the player must watch that test. So he can actually see, and then you can highlight, and he can see, is this player actually running effectively? And I found, the coaches are quite good these days, that they will agree with you. They'll look and they'll say, no, but this guy's not ready to play. Or you tell him that this guy can play, but he can only play 40 minutes. I always believe in being honest with coaches. It's no point in telling a coach something that's not going to happen. You want him to trust you. And that comes with time. So by the time you get to a World Cup, you don't have those sort of teething problems.
Sure. Now, it's another tricky question. As one of the few females in a very male, macho environment, how do you take care of yourself?
Okay, it's a tricky question, because I've always started off saying to myself that it is a male environment, and I don't expect different treatment in that male environment. I don't expect the players to be different in their change room because I'm a female and I'm there. However, there's always been respect. I'm told that rugby players are very good compared to football players. I don't know. But I've always felt respected as a female in the environment. But to look after myself, I do think that it does make you quite tough, and you lose a little bit of your emotional side to things, because you learn very quickly that you can't take things personally. It's a harsh environment. Hard decisions have to be made. People are going to say things that you may not like, and you have to know whether it's not personal. But I think that's the same for a male or a female. You can have sensitivities, and you have to overcome that. And that's the only way you'll survive in the environment, because it's not about you. If your ego's too big, I don't think you'll survive, because this environment requires you to absorb a lot.
Okay, good answer.
Yes, I think you need to be flexible in your thinking and to have a solid ground and relationship with your family, because it can become quite lonely. Sometimes it sounds glamorous, you're traveling with these amazing rugby team, but it can become quite a lonely environment. So you need to maintain good, strong relationships with the family back home. That's important. I need to exercise regularly to keep yourself clear head and clarity. I think that's important.
So let's talk about the World Cup. Just a couple of questions there. How confident was the team about winning the World Cup when they arrived there before the first game against New Zealand?
I think confidence is a strong word. I think that we always felt as a team we were confident about our preparation. We were covering all our bases in the things that we could control. And that we always kept in mind that rugby is a game where there is an element of luck, like any sport, where there's a bounce ball. But for us, we were never going to be satisfied unless we put in 100% effort in everything we do. And that was important. The amazing thing about our leadership was you can make mistakes. Anyone in this team can make mistakes, but make sure that your intentions were clear of what you wanted to achieve and that you put in 100% work rate. But having said that, when we set out I've got this picture in my head, which we had from day one, which was 18 months before that final test match. And we did have at the end the trophy.
Okay.
We did have all the test matches for the 18 months outlined, and we had our guesses about who we'd play after the pool stages. And there was a trophy at the end. So yes, we did believe that we could do it, and we were working towards it. It was a quiet confidence.
Yes. I would say people like Tiger Woods, when they're putting from 20 meters away, and most people, when they're putting from that distance, think, well, I just hope the ball goes in. Tiger Woods expects it to go in. If it doesn't, it looks like a long shot to everybody else, but if it doesn't, the disappointment is visible. So then you lost the first game to New Zealand. Did the mood go down after that?
Yes, I think that mood is always affected by a loss.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with experience, one manages that because you go back to your protocols and processes, and that stays the same whether you win or lose a match.
Okay, that's good.
And so after that match, yes, if you are superstitious and you hear lots of people saying, oh, no one's won the World Cup if you lose a pool game, you do think about it. But we were confident that we could correct the mistakes we made in that game. Our review was much longer after that game. We felt that we could analyze everything properly and we could make sure that we don't make the same mistakes again. Particularly looking at the things that we did with the ref was very important.
From where we were sitting back home, and of course, all rugby fanatics, as you know, the whole country is. After the semi-finals, when England really whacked New Zealand, we thought, whoa, this is going to be a tough one, even if we beat Wales in the semi-finals, which we did. But we thought England was going to be really, really tough. How did you think back in Japan?
Yes, so I'm going to tell you from my perspective. So from my perspective, yes. I remember watching that game with Beast. I remember I was treating Beast and we had moved the physio bed out of the physio room to one of the rooms, the coach's room, where there was a TV so that I could treat and we could watch the semi-final. And the interesting thing for me was there was this calmness with the players.
Mm-hmm.
So me seeing this game, also feeling, my word, what's going on here? We really did think we were going to play the All Blacks in the final. All our preparation was All Blacks in the final. And asking the players, asking Beast, asking Dwayne, asking Andre, would you guys prefer to play in the final? And the answer was, we don't mind. That gave me a peace of mind because then I realized once again, there was confidence in our preparation. That yes, that week up into the final was going to be different depending on who we're playing because it's a completely different game plan. That there was preparation for both.
And then on the main match day, you said there was this quiet confidence even a week before the time. Well, maybe a few days before the time. Not sure when the semi-finals were, how long before the final. So it was about a week. On match day, was there calmness about the team?
Yes, there was something different in the air. You felt it was tangible. I think starting with Cyril coming to visit us that morning was different. The fact that the leader of the country plus our leader of the team, Rassie, was saying, go out and enjoy it. You've done the hard work. Don't be worried about making mistakes. Just forget about your ego also. That was also the message that was coming through all this time. Don't worry about how you're going to look. Think about what you need to do for the team. And that was for all of us. Whether you were playing, whether you were support staff, the message was the same. The routine was the same. There's some safety with routine, I think.
Absolutely.
You're going through everything, but also knowing that this is more than a game. This is something bigger for the country. And I think that was probably our driving force, our motivating factor that probably England did not have.
All right. So things have changed a little bit over the last few months. What is different in your life?
Yes, a lot is different in my life at the moment. I feel that I am constantly telling myself I must be grateful because I've got so much positivity. I've got food and I've got a beautiful home and I'm staying with loved ones and family and we are still all safe and healthy, not so sane, but safe.
Yeah.
And you understand that this is a problem that's going to be with us for a long time. So it changed the way I work. My work means close contact. I cannot social distance to treat clients. Even though that's what I did for level 5, I didn't see any clients. In level 4, I started seeing clients, but now I'm wearing a plastic overall. Yesterday, I had clients say to me, they don't recognize me. with my visor and my masks and stuff. So we're really doing things differently. And obviously the challenges of, home life and work life. And then, of course, rugby. Every week it changes about when we'll actually get back onto the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do get onto the pitch, the challenges facing the competitive athlete in terms of the coronavirus and how we're going to manage it. So our landscape has changed a lot. I mean, I remember the 1st of March, I said to Jacques at an alignment camp we had with the Stormers players, I said to him, this coronavirus is getting quite a big thing in Europe. What if it affects us? What do you think we're going to do? And he said to me, no, it's just a flu. Don't stress about it. And 20 days later, we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
Level 5. But the situation's so fluid. I mean, New Zealand are playing matches this weekend and they've got full crowds attending. So things change so much. So 3 weeks ago, we were saying there's no rugby for the rest of this year for South Africa. And now we are talking about whether we're having a championship or an end-of-year tour. It's very fluid.
Well, René, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you for your frankness, for being here today and for telling us about some of the stuff that goes on that very few of us know anything about. But of course, crucial to the success of our team, of which we're very proud. And good luck for the British Lions. I hope they arrive next year and I hope you're something. Thank you very much, René.
Thank you very much, Derek. It's an absolute pleasure chatting to you. Thank you.